Welcome you also.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm from Sydney.
Ah, yes, I'm from Sydney also originally. Actually, we're from the spiritual world. But so, we'll read one verse from Bhagavad Gita, and we'll get a bit of audience participation. So, somebody give me a number between 1 and 18.
1 and 18.
Between 1 and 18. 9? 9, okay. Well, we're going for the confidential stuff. All right. Well, let's give me a number between 1. How far do you want to go?
1 and 10.
1 and 10. No, give me a number between 1 and 34.
1 and 24. 10 and 20.
10 and 20. We already got 9. So I want a number between 1 and 30 now.
1 and 30.
9:30.
9:30. All right, we'll go right to 9:30. So please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, text 30. Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, of course, is the most confidential knowledge. And text number 30 is also a very famous verse. If you know it, you can repeat after me. Apichet Sudaracharo Bhajate Mamananyabhag Sadureva Chamantavya Samyak Vyavastito Hisa. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. Purport. The word Sudarchara, used in this verse, is very significant and we should understand it properly. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditioned and the other one is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities, even for the devotees, in connection with conditioned life, and such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of his spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness or the devotional service of the Lord has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position and they're technically called devotional service. Now in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, the devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disturb or disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows that perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits acts which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically, but such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord being situated within his heart purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi fully engaged in the service of the Lord sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness is so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path, for as explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course as soon as the devotee is completely situated in Krishna consciousness. So the purport is quite long. The point that's being made here is there are two natures, two situations. And this is something that many people, when they come to Krishna consciousness, they have questions about. How does one balance one's material activities and one's spiritual activities? This is really the gist of what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here in the purport. We live within this world, we have a material body. And that material body, it is said, is the last karma that leaves you. Even if you do everything right in this world, still, as long as you have this body, even if you engage it in Krishna's service, still the body has some deficiencies. And as it says in the scriptures, there's birth, there's death, there's old age, and there's disease. When you're young, you don't think about most of those things. But as you progress in your years, definitely the thought of getting old worries you. The body just doesn't perform the way it used to. And you start to look along and you start to think, so I'm going to get old. And at some point you start to think about, what's it like to die? Right? Has anybody ever seen somebody die? Okay, so you're pretty familiar with that incident. It kind of goes pretty quickly, isn't it? One moment the person's there, next minute the person's gone. Even when people are suffering, people always have that hope. We always cling to the hope that everything's going to be okay. We never think that the person's going to go. When the person's no longer there, we realize, that's it. That's it. Was that it? Right? It's just, person's gone. So we get some experience, and that experience may make us a little sober, but due to the nature of this world, material energy, it said, has two ingredients. One's called avaranatmika, and the other one's called pratyakshatmika. One throws you down into the material life, and the other one covers you over and makes you think that you're very happy in that situation. So even though we may sometimes realize, oh, I'm in this material world, because there's another energy which covers their consciousness, it covers us over. And Srila Prabhupada points out here that even yogis can get bewildered. In Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita says that even one of the senses that distracts you can take you away. Just one of the senses. We read stories about yogis who are meditating underwater for thousands of years. And then they just see two fish having sex, and then they think, oh God, maybe I should, what am I doing here in the water? My skin's all wrinkled, I should be out there, you know. Or we may become influenced in so many different ways. That's why it is said, to be a yogi in this age, or to even practice spiritual life in this age, is quite phenomenal. Very phenomenal, actually. We read the story of Ajamil. Ajamil was being trained to be a brahmana, Pakka brahmana, right from his birth. He went to Gurukul, parents were brahmanas, trained up, but somehow he was distracted by the embrace of two persons, and he desired that woman, and then he squandered his inheritance, and he squandered money, and then he took up low-class activities. So that was one person with a pure consciousness seeing something distracting. Well, you don't even have to go to the Gold Coast to see that. Right? You can see that everywhere around you, every billboard, every moment, every place you go, there is some material distraction. Advertising people, they're expert at getting you to do things that you don't really need to do. Right? Most of the things that we do, if you look at around your house or anything, most of the things that we have, we don't really need those things. We could live without a lot of things, actually. I don't know if you've ever had that when you look around the house and think, do I really need this? Like I periodically go around the house and I put everything in a big pile and I think, okay, will this go or will this stay? Right? Will this go or will this stay? I always wonder, I'm not a hoarder, but where did all this stuff come from? I remember when I first moved out of the ashram, I moved out with one suitcase, and then I was living, you might remember, at 84 Bank Road on the corner. I'd lived there for 15 years or something. When I moved, there was like 10 truckloads of things. And I thought, where did all this stuff come from? And somehow I still have a shed full of stuff, and I think, this is like, sometimes material possessions can be like they're like a stone around, not just a stone, but, they're like a 10-ton anchor. And they keep you in this world. So, especially, it's not just the person who's coming to Krishna consciousness, but even a person who's practicing Krishna consciousness gets ensnared. It's very easy to get ensnared. We wonder, how will I leave this world? How will I always think of Krishna and never forget him? I'm thinking of so many other things as well. So this is the struggle. This is the struggle that each one of us experiences. We don't need to hear this. We already have practical experience of this. We have full vigyan. Right? It's not just knowledge, we have vigyan. But then, how do we deal with it? And along with this, Krishna says that what happens when you're in this world, because of our imperfections, we all understand the imperfections of the senses and how it leads us to make mistakes. And because we make mistakes, then we become illusioned. And because we get illusioned, then we cheat others, we cheat ourselves. We don't mean to. We think we're an honest person, but we sometimes just get things wrong. Right? Because we heard something wrong, we saw something wrong. We just make mistakes. And because we make those mistakes, the mistake that we make is, okay, well, I know I'm not this body, but we just get caught up. And because we get caught up, then we try to deal with all the different needs of the body and the extended bodies that we have around us and our family members and society, and then we're looking for friendship and love and all these things. So as we get caught up in all of that, we make mistakes. It's very difficult to go through this one lifetime without having goofed up at least once. Can anybody say that they've never made a mistake? Of course they say that, mistakes are the, what's the saying? That unless you make a mistake, you can't get perfect. Something along those lines.
We're learning on our mistakes.
Huh?
We're learning our mistakes.
Yeah, we're learning from our mistakes. Well, we're not sure about that. Because there are different types of intelligence also, right? Right? First class intelligence, it's hard to find somebody like that who just learns by hearing. Most people, in this society we say, we learn from our mistakes. So, at best, we're second class, right? At best. And third class, the people who never learn. They just keep going and going. And sometimes we may, as we go through our life, even though we make vows, I'm never going to do this again, but we do it again. We just do it again. And Srila Prabhupada foresaw this problem that we faced. Now, I listened to a lecture the other day. It was not a devotee lecture, it was some other person, and they were talking about spirituality. And they were talking about organized religion. Right? Nobody really joins or becomes a member because they just love the management structure. Have you ever heard of somebody who joined a spiritual organization because they thought the management structure was just so fantastic that they just couldn't? Anybody here like that? I don't think so. we take up a path because we like the lifestyle, we like the philosophy, we like all the aspects of it. Yet still organizations exist because in that forum, in that sangha, we get the opportunity to remind each other of the mistakes that we make. And somehow devotees they relish telling each other about each other's mistakes a lot. Isn't it? Prabhu, you're in Maya. Right? And for some people that's a very challenging environment to be in, because our false egos of the nature where we think, I don't need anybody to tell me I'm doing something wrong. Why should anybody tell me something's wrong? I don't want that. Yet at the same time, when it's done in a spirit of love and a spirit of helping, then it has an opportunity to remind us not just to make mistakes again, but it gives us a certain degree also of determination. Now, spiritual life has two aspects. One is called Vairagya, and the other one is called Vidya, Vairagya Vidya. Vairagya, of course, means renunciation. Vidya means knowledge. So both aspects have to be there. The aspect of Vairagya, of renunciation, breeds what we call determination. When you renounce something for a higher cause, you develop some determination, not just in spiritual life, but if you just look at any great sports person, for example, you might see them on the Olympic Games, on the podium, and everybody's cheering them. But behind the scenes, that person has done a lot of vairagya. He's done a lot of renunciation, been getting up early in the morning, doing his jogging or whatever, weightlifting, training, denying himself so many things. And because of that, also developed some determination. So in spiritual life, there is a balance between vairagya, between renunciation, and also between vidya. They're also knowledge. A lot of people, they will do some renunciation, they will do something, but they really don't know why they're doing it or what the benefit of it is. They don't perform their activities knowledge. And Krishna specifically gives people texts such as Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, so many different Vedic texts, so that people may come to understand why they're doing it, what are the benefits of doing it, what is the end result of doing it. These are quite common terms actually in, let's say, in the corporate world. If somebody works in a company, people, they have a goal, they have a mission, they have a goal, they have a plan, action plan, they have a timeline, they have assessment. These things are quite normal for people who are working in the secular world. Somehow we don't seem to apply these principles very much in Krishna consciousness, unfortunately. And because of that, sometimes we struggle. Sometimes we don't get the result that we thought we were going to get. It's a very common statement that you see or you experience with new devotees. They may begin the process of Krishna consciousness. They relish it, they enjoy it, and they may feel that, yes, I have become a pure devotee. I've become free, I'm tasting spiritual nectar. And then after 6 months they go, oh, I'm so much in Maya. I feel so much illusion. Why can't I sustain? So for this sustenance, for the long-term sustenance of spiritual development, there needs to be a variety of additional factors. There needs to be knowledge, there needs to be service, there needs to be practical application of the meditational practices, And there needs to be a constant assessment. It's like a cycle. One has to assess oneself. So the Vaishnava Acharyas, they have also written texts in which one can assess oneself. Vacha Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Pashta Vegam. You can assess how much am I free also from lust, anger and greed. Not just when I'm at the temple. The temple's easy. Sometimes people, they come and they make a show of being a devotee. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. See, nice to love. Hare Krishna. And then they will drive down the road and somebody cuts them off and they'll jump out and you get the gun and shoot the guy. Right? Road rage. Krishna consciousness is, Krishna is actually in the heart. He's not just on the altar. Right? Krishna is also in your heart. And wherever we go, Krishna comes along with us. And it's said he is also the witness of our activities. And he likes to see also what is our behavior when nobody else is watching. How have we implemented the principles of Krishna consciousness? Have we become Jivadoya? Have we become a friend to all living entities? Are we able to be a friend to all living entities? Or do we distinguish? He's just, whatever. He's a nice guy, but no, look at him. Just look at him. People are always very apt to judge just by looking at someone. They go, look at him. He just looks bad. We find this story even in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he was dressed as a very opulent person. When the devotees went to see him, they thought, who is this materialistic person? But upon hearing a verse from the Bhagavatam, he displayed his actual devotional nature. So Krishna consciousness has to be a real thing. It has to be something that strikes at the core of one's heart. And only in that way can these difficulties of living within this material world be resolved. There's really no cheap way out, so to speak. There's no easy. Although Krishna consciousness is very easy, it can be easily practiced by anybody. Prabhupada said even a child can dance, even a child can chant. Yet we see that adults often seem to have a lot of problems. Even highly intelligent adults struggle with the mind and the senses and their situation. They don't know how to assimilate themselves. So Prabhupada created a sangha in which we can come together and discuss these things. So many places Srila Prabhupada mentions that to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, one should hear it in the association of devotees. And I think time and time again, we find that devotees have wonderful realizations. When they share their realizations on particular points, it becomes very relishable, and one not only gets an insight, but one often gets a lot of enthusiasm. Because A, one realizes, I'm not alone in my struggles in this world. There are other people also struggling. And B, even though people are struggling, still they keep trying. They still keep trying, they keep chanting. And as the years go by, gradually one comes to realize, just like there's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that we sometimes chant, but before the Bhagavatam class, it's Nasta Praishya Bhaktishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhagavati Naistiki. Then the next verse says, Tadara Jastamobhava Kama Lobareyas Chade Cheta Eter Navitam Stitam Sattve Prashidati. So that verse, the first one of course says that by regular attendance in class, the Srimad Bhagavatam, all the difficult things may go away. Then it says that gradually, as the modes of passion and ignorance are dispelled, and one comes to the mode of goodness. Mode of goodness means, in all one's activities, mode of goodness doesn't just mean that you put on clean clothes and have a shower twice a day or something. It means in all one's activities, in one's eating, sleeping, mating and defending, everything. And it says that when one comes to that mode of goodness, then one will see oneself. One can see oneself. And then later in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that when one has learned to control the mind, one can reach the super soul. He equates the control of the mind to reaching the super soul, which is Krishna conscious realization. Yeah. It's Paramatma, realizing the Lord as a super soul within the heart. So, in the association of devotees, all these things will come up, and one will learn different techniques, and one will learn how to apply oneself practically. But it is not just people ask the question, how can I become a devotee? How can I balance my material life with my spiritual life? There is more to it. There is actually a need to apply oneself also. There needs to be application in a very practical way. And as Srila Prabhupada points out here, he says here that sometimes a person may fall down. What does that mean? Well, luckily in Kali Yuga we don't seem to get reactions so much for mental fall downs. Otherwise there'd be very little hope for it. At least for me. I don't know for you, but maybe your mind is very pure. But on the level of the mind, we're always contemplating, isn't it? Because that's a function of mind. While contemplating the objects of sense, a person develops attachment from attachment, lust arises, and so on. When one gets caught up in this. So Krishna kindly says, okay, well, chant Hare Krishna, will you? Try to engage your mind in something higher. And even if you try to chant Hare Krishna, still Arjuna mentions that the mind is like the wind that's blowing here and there. He says, so wherever it goes, just pull it back with determination. So that determination also is part of the renunciation part. You want determination for what? To draw your mind back. Savai mana Krishna padada vindayo. We want to bring it back to the lotus feet of Krishna. It's not this is not a cult thing. But if you hear about somebody long enough, you may actually remember them. Right? You may actually remember them. And when you do service for somebody, you may actually develop attachment for them. I've seen it, that people who their whole life, they've done a particular type of activity and then they retire, and then in their retirement they don't know what to do, so they go back to doing the same thing again, even though they might not have even liked the activity, but they develop an attachment just by that constant activity. So, in the beginning, Krishna consciousness may be relishable or it may be a challenge, depending on one's previous life, one's karma, one's piety. But we've seen people who have very good karma, and for them practicing Krishna consciousness seems very easy, and we've seen some people, for them it's very, very difficult. We had one devotee here in Brisbane. Before he became a devotee, he'd been a hunter, like a professional hunter, hunting deer in New Zealand. And for him to become a devotee was a great struggle. He said, I've done so many sinful things in my life. I struggle with memories and I struggle with these things all the time. But he just continued chanting. He chanted extra and extra, and over the years, his nature changed. The power of the mantra was so strong that his nature changed. He was able to actually, and he said many times, I wanted to give up and I want to stop the process. And the mind is like that we may often think, no, I don't want to associate with the devotees. He said this to me, she said that to me. Maybe they didn't even say anything, maybe they looked at me funny. Right? It's not just in Krishna consciousness, I'm sure it's in the workplace too, like that. Anybody experience that in the workplace? Regularly.
You go down the street, you will see people looking at you and you say, he's doing such and such thing, and things like that.
Yeah. I remember the first time I went to New York City in the 80s, I was sitting in the car and the devotee next to me said, don't look left, don't look right, look straight ahead. Because it was really like a jungle back then, you know. If you looked at somebody, like, what? People were so on edge. Right? Because even nowadays, people are so much agitated. They're so on edge. Anybody looks at them, it could be anything. You might just be looking at them with compassion, thinking, I'd like to help you, and they're thinking, what do you want? Right? So this age that we live in, it's also very difficult. And so we've discussed the problems of the fall downs, we've discussed the problem that because we have a material body, sometimes we may get enamored, we may get ensnared. Practicing spiritual life is difficult. So then the next logical question that comes is, so how do I tell people about Krishna? Because if you have something that you like and you get some experience, maybe if you think about it, when I became a devotee, I went home with the Bhagavad Gita, and my mother said, what's that? And I said, you should read this book. It's good for you. Help you become spiritual, you know. And you know, parents, you know, the young kids come home and they go, what would the parents think? Oh, I've already seen life, you know. Right? But you have, when you find something new, you want to share it with others. So it's a natural thing that when you practice Krishna consciousness and you actually get some experience, and we get what we call higher taste, the param drishta, the natural consequence of that is that you would like to share that with others. You want to say to others, well, you know, it helped me, maybe it can help. Well, I don't know if you need help. Sometimes people don't like that idea of somebody wanting to help them. But maybe it can add something to your life. So devotees want to help others. And a lot of times people don't want help. They don't want to be helped. And a devotee faces that struggle, that even he wants to give Krishna to others, many people don't want it. Right? You may remember that verse in the Gita, Manusyanam sahasrishu kaschititati siddhaya. Thousands among men may even attempt spiritual life, and there are thousands such people, hardly one achieves Krishna, understands me in truth, Krishna says. So the devotees of Krishna can balance their spiritual life by recognizing all these points, but most importantly, when they try to give Krishna consciousness to others, Krishna will give you a special dispensation. He'll give you some special mercy, he'll give you some special realization, something that you don't just get from reading a book, or even from just coming for darshan, or even from chanting. When you try to give Krishna consciousness to others, you are forced to confront your own shortcomings, and you have to learn to depend on Krishna, pray to Krishna, tolerate a lot of, well, sometimes you get good responses, but sometimes you may not get a good response. You have to learn to become very tolerant, and you have to reflect. Whenever we face the material energy, it's like a mirror is being held up to our face. Often we may think that others are at fault, others are bad, whatever. But often our own shortcomings are reflected in the people that we meet. And depending on our own state of consciousness, we can reflect either purity back to that person, or we can reflect bad qualities back to that person. Isn't it? And it becomes a real test. It becomes a real opportunity to make advancement, or it becomes a real opportunity to become despondent also. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada's movement is not just about moksha. If you ask the average person in India, perhaps, what's the goal of life? They may say dharma, artha, kama, moksha, liberation. Devotees are already, somebody who hears the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is already liberated from the first moment, because they hear this statement, aham brahmasmi, you're not this body. As soon as one understands, oh, I'm not this body, and one starts to try to act on that platform, that's already basic liberation. Devotees, one who wants to be a devotee of Krishna goes beyond liberation. He goes to the point where he's not just thinking selfishly. I was talking with one devotee, and we were talking about how, where I live in Hong Kong or in China, how people are, what we say, godless. I was reading Hong Kong is the second most godless place in the world. So I was trying to reflect what actually godlessness is. And godlessness really is selfishness. And one who is godly is selfless. Bhakti means selfless. Anya vilashita sunyam jnana kamyanota. Isn't it? That's what pure bhakti means. You're a selfless person. You're not even thinking about others. You're not even thinking about your own liberation. You're just thinking about seeing the suffering of others and how you can help them. Selfless. So a godly person is a selfless person. And a godless person is a selfish person. And the world, no matter if people proclaim themselves to be religious or not, is by and large a lot of selfish people out there. Isn't it? A lot of selfish people. And the process of elevating one's consciousness is learning how to leave that platform of selfishness and become selfless. So in the beginning we may become selfless. We may think, oh, I will do something for Krishna. Then one may also think, oh, I will do something for my guru. Right? My guru is everything. And then as a person makes a little bit more advancement, then they may think, oh, gee, there's also devotees besides my guru. Right? So there's the guru, there's the devotees. And then he may realize, oh, there's also the conditioned souls. I was also one of them. Maybe I'm still one of them. What can I do? And as one helps those people, the realizations come flooding in. And the tendency to fall down, the tendency to want to, in a selfish way, embrace the material energy, gradually diminishes. Gradually diminishes. So much to the point that a devotee is always with Krishna, even in his body. There's a verse that describes the qualities of what is called a jivan mukta. A jivan mukta means a soul who has mukti, who's liberated. One of those qualities, of course, is that he's completely forgetful even of his own body, of his own bodily situation. He's so absorbed. Every week, every day actually, we have in China we have online classes, because many of the devotees, there are no temples. Okay, devotees have no experience of temples. The best they have is maybe associating once a week in somebody's apartment. Okay, so they have no experience of deity worship, of temple life, any of those things. So we try to keep Krishna consciousness alive for them all by leveraging technology. So we have a class on Skype every day at 7 a.m. Different devotees speak about, some devotees speak about Bhagavad Gita, some are doing Chaitanya Charitamrita, some are doing Bhagavatam, some are doing questions and answers. So on different days there are different topics people can tune in. And we've been doing that for probably close to 8 or 9 years now. So the devotees, this is their connection. They listen in like this, and gradually they come to understand, oh, wherever I go, whoever I meet, I should tell them about Krishna. I'm hearing about Krishna, I want to tell others about Krishna. And in this way, Krishna consciousness can actually spread. Here in Australia, you know, as I said, it's the land of milk and honey. It's unbelievably easy. Life is so unbelievably easy here for people compared to many other places in the world where people maybe, Harinam Charan can say what it's like back in your country, right? Difficult, isn't it? Difficult? Difficult to be a devotee, right? Many other places, difficult. So let us, as we read this verse, let us reflect what are we doing to help others? And in so doing, how are we showing our selflessness towards others? How are we becoming godly? How much are we giving up our godlessness? We may be chanting Hare Krishna, dressed as devotees, but how much are we becoming godly? How much are we giving up our selfishness, thinking only about ourselves? And how much are we thinking about others? How we can give Krishna to others? Srila Prabhupada spent, the hours of the night translating these books, getting them published. If you think about the sacrifice that he made at an advanced age, traveling, it's tough enough traveling when you're, when you're 20, 30, 40, 50. What about when you're 60 or 70 or 80? And not just, once a year, but constantly. Prabhupada went around the world 13 times. It's quite grueling. Travel is a grueling thing. And he took all that upon himself just because he saw the suffering of others. So Srila Prabhupada was a selfless person. And being a devotee often is and it's also a thankless sometimes task, because we often also expect some sort of reward, because we're still in the conditioned state. We're very fruitive. We want one of the biggest needs, the psychological needs of a living entity, is recognition and appreciation. Right? We all want to be appreciated. We want to be recognized. Right? So how can we deal with all those things? Best way is preach Krishna consciousness. Try to do something, help others. Look what the people across the road did. Why can't we do something like that? What's stopping us? We've got the highest philosophy in existence. Yet there are many things, obstacles. Of course, we could say, well, they've been going for a few thousand years and so on. We need to look at our own self. Everything starts with ourselves. Don't ever look towards somebody else. Srila Prabhupada was, you could say, alone in New York City. But he created association, he created a vision, he created a plan, he executed on it, duplicated it, went from one country to another country. So we can do the same thing. We can ourselves become Krishna conscious, we can make others Krishna conscious, we can go suburb to suburb here. And I remember a few years, maybe 15 years ago, Tirtharaj Prabhu did this thing where he was going, chant in every zip code of Brisbane.
That was when the drought was happening.
Huh?
That was when the drought was happening.
That's right, yeah. Chant in every zip code of Brisbane. Think of something, do something. And Krishna will reward you unlimitedly. He'll give you Krishna consciousness, and he'll make the world Krishna conscious. So that's what we are hoping for. And if we do it together, then I'm sure something very wonderful will come about it. So thank you very much for letting me speak a little bit about this verse. Has anybody got any comments? Some corrections that they'd like to make? Something to say? Yes?
Yeah. Prabhu, you said that you have been preaching in Hong Kong and China. And we can see the results, though you are doing through Skype and all that. When in Vrindavan we see so many Chinese people, they are coming during Kartik month, and I think devotees are doing such a wonderful job there, in spite of not having a temple. But these Chinese devotees comes in hundreds and all that. We have been watching them every year in Shakti, that they are coming to Vrindavan.
And a lot of those people are just new people who come from the yoga tours.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So the devotee who does that, Tirtharaj Prabhu, he's been cultivating them through cooking. He has these cooking classes,
Right.
and then from the cooking classes they get them to sign up for this tour.
Yeah.
And they usually go, what they do is they first go to Rishikesh,
Yes.
then they go to Agra,
Yeah.
they go to Jaipur, and then they finish off the tour in Vrindavan.
Right.
By the time they actually come to Vrindavan, they're very enthusiastic. Usually Dandadar Maharaj, he preaches to them. And so yeah. Yes,
You see some evidence of yoga was so greatly there. Our Guru Maharaj went to China as well, recently, Gopal Krishna Maharaj.
oh yeah.
And he was dancing with them, and he's in about 73s now.
He wasn't in good health. He was really, I saw him and he was really not in good health, yet he really gave a lot of energy. It was quite amazing actually.
Amazing. And the way he was holding hands over the Chinese over there, and they were dancing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
They have a very, they chant with great enthusiasm. When you ask people, even brand new people to chant, everybody will chant with all their heart and voice. There's nowhere in the world that I've heard people just respond so enthusiastically. It's quite amazing. But they also face other challenges which distract them, unfortunately. So.
Prabhuji, in China, is that possible openly to how it is now?
It goes in waves, okay? It goes in waves. So there's an invisible glass ceiling. When you hit it, you know it. And then you kind of go down again. So we try, we push the ceiling, we see what happens. And we have to shut up again and then again, you know. So we just now we just had a meeting for 8 days and in Beijing. Previously we just had an apartment, then we had a building, then we had another building, and we spent a lot of money. We had a grand opening, then overnight they just came and bulldozed everything. And then the devotees are so determined, they found something else and they've renovated something else, and they have an amazing spirit that despite, I mean, you know, they get really knocked back. I mean, really substantially knocked back, but they've got an amazing determination. They're just, okay, that didn't work. Okay, we're going to find something else. We're going to do something else again. You know, and it's not like it's cheap, you know. They spent money and then again they find something else, again go for it, and then each time, you know, it may be like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. So I don't see it being open, but it's really just about, it's not so much about having temples, but just changing people's hearts. That'll be the test actually. How many people's hearts we can change, and that will create the difference. Yes.
In Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
the government backed the Bhagavad Gita in Arabic, and it was presented, and they sold about 100,000 Bhagavad Gita in Arabic, and that was amazing achievement really. When you think of it, in a Muslim country, it's very difficult to do that, but Muslims have taken up Bhagavad Gita as well.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, really. Well,
Yeah. Devotees just have to be determined. Just despite all obstacles, we keep going.
and the whole project was funded by the Arabs,
Wow.
Arab government, Saudi Arabian government.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada's mercy for the conditions.